In Austria's legislative elections in September 2024, a far-right party came in first for the first time since the Second World War. The Russia-friendly Freedom Party, or FPO, won just under 29% of the vote. It took over 5 months for the center-right People's Party to form a workable coalition that excluded the far-right. So ultimately, the FPO did not enter government. However, their victory at the polls was unprecedented. The party has a controversial history. Founded in 1950s by former National Socialists, the FPO was once considered relatively moderate. But that changed in the 1980s. Today, under leadership of Herbert Kickl, who calls himself the People's Chancellor, the party has fully embraced hardline nationalism and anti-establishment rhetoric. One of its main targets is Austria's independent media. The FPO has repeatedly attacked independent journalists, branding reporters as part of so-called liberal elite or a globalist establishment. They've even revived the Nazi-era slur, Lügenpresse, which means lying press. The party has been particularly hostile toward Austria's public broadcaster, ORF. They've pledged to abolish household-based broadcasting fees by the end of 2026 and replace them with direct state funding, a move that critics warn would threaten ORF's independence and place public service media in Austria under government control. You're listening to Media Freedom in Focus. It's a podcast by the Media Freedom Rapid Response, or MFRR in short, a consortium of organizations defending press freedom and journalists' rights across the EU member states and candidate countries. I'm Teona Sechniashvili, your host today, and the Europe Network and Advocacy Officer at the International Press Institute, a global media freedom organization and a member of the MFRR. Today, we are shining a spotlight on Austria. We'll discuss the FPO's smear campaigns targeting journalists, as well as the broader state of media freedom in the country. Joining us is Lena Paulec, a journalist at Falter, which is Austria's one of leading weekly magazines. Hi Lena, thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to have you here. So for Falter magazine, you reported extensively on countries like Hungary and Slovakia, where media freedom and democratic freedoms have eroded, though to varying degrees and also at different paces, but it seems that the decline in press freedom started with long-run smear campaigns targeting journalists. Do you see any parallels between the kind of rhetoric used by liberal and far-right groups in these countries and across the region generally, and the way Austria's far-right party, the Freedom Party, talks about and approaches independent and legacy journalism?
Yeah. So, yes, just to recall for our listeners, in the beginning of the year, the FPÖ was very close to become the governing party. The FPÖ made first place in the election in autumn, but they couldn't find a partner to govern with. So now we have a coalition of three parties, the Conservatives, the Socialists, and the Liberals. So now we have kind of a phase where everything is a bit more quiet, but the threat obviously is still there. So coming back to your questions, if the FPÖ were to govern, they had already made very clear what their program would look like. And it is in many ways an exact copy of countries such as Slovakia or Hungary. For example, the attacks on public television ORF. We know that the FPÖ would have wanted to cut the broadcasting contribution fees. So everyone has to pay in order to finance the ORF, which is a very big topic for the FPÖ because they call it Zwangsgebühren, which means forced fees. So it's about 180 euros per year that each citizen has to pay. And the reason these costs are directly paid by citizens is because the government cannot control the budget. So what the FPÖ was proposing was to cut the budget, but also to finance it from public money, which means that they can decide how much they want to spend. And by doing so, they would gain control, influence power, and eventually cutting the independence of ORF. So this was a big proposition they made. Also, they were presenting plans to have only one channel of ORF. Right now there are three. And they wanted to cut the budget by half. So about 1,500 people would have lost their jobs. And they wanted at least two people of their party in the head department of the ORF. So it was a big, attack on the public broadcasting institution. And apparently these plans were so extreme that the Conservative Party decided back then that they could not form a coalition with the FPÖ. So, I mean, it was one of many reasons, but it was a major one. And another similarity to Eastern European countries is that they want to cut media funding by the state. Basically said that they don't want to give any money anymore to independent media based on criteria of quality. Also, Falter, for which I work, would have lost money. And they wanted to cut the funding of control institutions such as the Presserat, which is evaluating the ethics of media, for example, or clubs that are promoting press freedom. So yes, there were many attacks on financing journalism and independent media.
In Central and Eastern Europe, we also see that far-right parties and illiberal regimes or actors consistently attack legacy and mainstream media, while on the other hand, they legitimize so-called alternative or disinformation media. What distinguishes the FPÖ's approach in this regard from the broader right-wing false narratives we see across the region?
Yeah. So I think what is specific in Austria, of course, we have alternative media that are kind of independent or paid by the FPÖ via advertisements or money from people that are near the FPÖ. And that is similar to Hungary and Slovakia. But the FPÖ, they really don't need traditional media, such as the ORF, because they have their own TV channels and online platforms that are literally called FPÖ TV or TV. So FPÖ TV has been online for 12 years on YouTube and Facebook, and they have 208,000 subscribers, and they say that they reached more than 1 million people. So they have a huge party media platform that is not even trying to imitate, or it is obviously it's imitating classic or traditional media, legacy media, but it is very clear that it comes from the party. It's not disguised like in Hungary, for example. So they have made it very clear when they were about to govern that they really don't need any TV channels apart from their own. And I would say, or as far as I know, in Hungary, traditional media still have more value for Orban. They are controlled by people that are near Orban, but they are still Orban still needs them, while the FPÖ is they have their own platforms. So I would say this is a huge difference. And in terms of the rhetoric, I mean, we don't really have the Soros narrative, obviously. We have a strong anti-EU rhetoric, but the attacks on media is more general in terms of the globalist leftist elite that is financed by taxpayers. And the FPÖ is the only institution and party that is for the ordinary people. So I would say it's more generalistic and less focused on conspiracy theories on particular people such as Soros, as in Hungary.
I was wondering if the FPÖ continues to, use this derogatory, demeaning language against the media, such as referring to media as Lügenpresse, or has this rhetoric stopped or maybe slowed down or, stopped since the last parliamentary elections?
No, it has not stopped. I would say it's gotten worse or more direct. There's this famous case of Dominik Knepp, which is the head of the Viennese branch of FPÖ, who called Der Standard, which is the largest liberal daily newspaper in Austria, a Scheißblatt, which means shitty newspaper or shit newspaper. So yeah, maybe it's gotten even more vulgar than calling them just liars.
Lina, you've mentioned ORF the public broadcaster and also Der Standard as those media outlets that that FPO has targeted or has been targeted rather. Which media outlets are mostly targeted in your opinion, and why are they singled out?
So yes, these two, and of course Falter, which is my newspaper, they are singled out because I mean, Falter's, we criticize the FPÖ very much, so obviously we're singled out, but also it is easy for them to create an enemy that is sort of the elite leftist media. So Der Standard and Falter, they're called like propaganda medium of the left. My editor-in-chief, Florian Klenk, is behaving abnormally. So they're trying to erode the trust in liberal media and to really create this image of leftist speakers. Yeah, so I would say the intention is very clear.
Apart from all these, smear campaigns and derogatory language, insults that we have discussed, that, FPO uses to undermine independent media, there also used vexatious lawsuits, including SLOPs. One such lawsuit was filed against one of Falter's managers. Can you tell us a bit more about this particular case?
Yeah, so it was actually against my editor-in-chief, Florian Klenk. It was in March this year because he posted a video on Instagram where he reposted a post from FPÖ with a new tag, which said, we're gonna get you out of there, which is the advertisement line of Falter. So this is our line. And the FPÖ says this was a violation of their copyright. And now they want 47,000 euros for that. And this is an interesting case because people repost stuff on Instagram all the time. I mean, that's basically the concept of Instagram stories, that you repost stuff that you see. So we will see how it ends, but it would basically question the whole functioning of social media, because that would mean I cannot repost anything without violating the copyright of someone else. I mean, yeah, so my boss says that we will get through this, but this is a clear case of a slap lawsuit.
Thank you very much, Lina. I'm going to ask about the impact of these attacks on credibility and public trust a bit later. But I also wanted to ask about the FPO affiliated alternative media networks. One could say it's essentially a network of disinformation platforms they use, right? They've been doing this since, I think, 2009. You said FPO wouldn't really need the public broadcaster to act as their, mouthpiece because they have their own platforms. So my question is, how big are those platforms? How influential are they? How large is their audience to influence public opinion to the point where they don't even need legacy, established mainstream media to spread their false narratives?
I mean, I just said that on YouTube they have over 200,000 subscribers, which is a lot. But I mean, in Austria is a small country. But there's also this new TV channel that is called Auf Eins, which is not directly from the FPÖ, so it's not FPÖ TV, but it is also a very large platform. But honestly, I would have to look up the numbers. I don't know exactly how much views they have. But yes, they do reach a lot of people. So, and they gain influence every year. The ORF is still very strong, and it's still, Austria is a small country. It's still very viewed by many people. But each year the FPÖ media is gaining importance. That's for sure.
Going back to the topic of trust, I looked up the Reuters Institute's digital news report, and public trust in the media is declining almost everywhere. It's a global issue. And in Austria, there has been a steady decline over the last decades in public trust in media. What is your impression in this regard? What do you think? How do you think the far-right narratives influence the trust and credibility in journalism?
Yes, I mean, this is definitely a global phenomenon, so this is not specifically Austrian. The trust in legacy media is declining everywhere, but the FPÖ is definitely contributing to this, because if you call someone a liar, maybe people will not believe it, but at some point they might question the neutrality. And to frame people as leftist, they will maybe not believe it in the first place, but then eventually they will think, oh yes, actually it's true that maybe some of the reports were, or you can see in the comments that they are influenced by leftist parties. And so this is a shift that we see all over the world. That of course, if this discourse is so widespread, something rests of this discourse, even for people that are not voting for right-wing parties. But I think it goes both ways. I mean, we as Falter have been, or we're witnessing also the contrary, that people are more engaging in public discourse and are more investing in media freedom if they see that the FPÖ is likely to govern. I mean, this is a trend that we have seen last time after the election, and this time back in the beginning of the year, when the FPÖ was about to govern, that people were buying more newspapers and trying to support media. So I think there's not only despair, but obviously it does threaten democracy as a whole, because if people start to believe that everybody lies, they start to disengage, and then corruption and authoritarian behavior rest unchecked, and politicians can evade criticism by dismissing critical reports as fake or biased.
Media freedom and journalist rights are largely protected in Austria. I think you agree. However, there are concerns about media pluralism. The media market is often criticized for lacking diversity or being highly concentrated. And very often the lack of sustainable media funding is brought up as one of the reasons as to why there is this lack of diversity and lack of pluralism in the media environment in Austria. What are the main issues related to media funding and sustainability, and what can be done to improve the situation in this regard, in your opinion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think one big issue that we have that is maybe not so easy to understand from the outside is the problem of public advertisements that are very important as a budget for media, for everyone, for every journalist. In the first 6 months of 2024, it was 196.5 million euros that were given to media through public advertisements. So basically the government is paying to print an advertisement in a newspaper, and this is sort of indirect media funding. This is kind of a tradition in Austria, and during the last years this has worked quite well. And just to compare this number of 196 million, the normal media, what's it called? The normal media funding is 7.1 million. So this is a huge difference. difference. But there is one problem with public advertisements. They're kind of an invitation to corruption because governments can give more advertisements to some media and less to others. Apart from the fact that the big media, such as Kronenzeitung or Österreich, which is the yellow press, is financed more because they're bigger. The public advertisements, how much they are given to each media, that depends just on the size of the media. Yes, and not on the quality. So you lose this sense of quality, which is part of the normal media funding budget. So yeah, I think people are very critical of this, or experts are very critical of this, that Austria should sort of give up on this tradition of funding and start to pay attention to quality, to criteria that are very clear. Maybe being part of the Presserat, that is also something that is evoked many times, that newspapers should sort of have an official status. They should have they should be qualified as a real medium and not just a platform, for example. Because what the FPÖ was trying to do in the beginning of the year to sort of confuse the term of what a medium actually is, so that everyone can profit from money that the state is giving. So this is something that should definitely be changed. And I think, I don't know, with the situation, with the next elections, maybe the government is about to do that. But I'm not sure about this. But I think there are plans to make changes.
Lina, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for talking to us today. Thanks. You've been listening to Media Freedom in Focus. For more in-depth episodes about media freedom in Europe, search Media Freedom in Focus in your podcast apps. To learn more about the Media Freedom Rapid Response Project, visit mfrr.eu. Thank you for listening, and until next time.